extremist group, something like that. We typically saw language like that, or even none of that included in prior plea deals at the federal level involving far less violent extremists. But no, in this case, it was like the Antifa ideology was mentioned specifically and clearly at the beginning of the stipulated facts. And also, I need to mention that these are people who are not being convicted of terrorism crimes because of ideology or speech. They admitted to being part of a cell that carried out an ambush shooting on an ICE facility in the Fort Worth area of Texas on the 4th of July. They used fireworks to lure out officers and agents and staff inside the ICE building, and then fired upon them. And one local police officer was shot in the neck. So this is not about ideology. It's about acts of domestic terrorism.
Yeah, the ideology is the motivating force, but it's not their belief system that they're being convicted for. It's the violence that they committed. You also, in your article, talk about the defense fund that raised, the International Antifa Defense Fund, that raised money for these defendants who pled guilty in this terror case. Talk to me about that, because that's something that I think I was unsure when the Trump administration started talking about designating Antifa as a terror group. Well, how are you going to do this? Are you going to call them a foreign terror organization because there are affinity groups all around the world, because the Antifa ideology didn't originate here? How are you going to connect that? You'd have to have a financial connection to the affinity groups here in the United States in order to designate them as international or as a foreign terror organization. If you designate them as a domestic terror organization, what power does that give you to dismantle them? I was a little bit unsure about how they were going to step around that. But talk to me about the international money that's flowing to these individuals and the implications of that.
So most of the funding for organized militant Antifa cells and their riots is done through what they call mutual aid, which is their fancy word for basically crowdfunding. They're extremely good at that. And it's not even particularly hidden. They will set up Cash Apps and Venmos and campaigns on GoFundMe or a number of other sites and distribute these links online across their vast online networks, and the money comes pouring in. Most of that is domestic. However, there is an international element to some of those who have been involved in Antifa violence at the international level. For example, there's a group called Antifa International, and one of the projects they run is the International Antifa Defense Fund. I wrote about them years ago in my book about Antifa because I saw, there's a case of prosecution of Antifa in this part of America or in Europe or in this other country. And they had their hands all over it in providing funding for the legal aid in that. And I wanted to know a bit more about how they work. And if you go on the blog for Antifa International, you can see that some of the members that they've highlighted have been individuals who have gone abroad to do terrorism training. Like they will actually post pictures of them holding up weapons of war and various firearms in places like Syria to show that their members have been trained at the military level to kill. So I mentioned to the White House at the roundtable that the foreign terror organization is very important because it's at the State Department that they could, for example, ban Antifa International. Now, so far, that has not been one of the groups that has been banned out of the four. However, it's my understanding through my sources that the four that have been banned so far are not going to be the only ones. So we'll wait and see. Antifa International and the defense fund that they run did provide funding to the legal defense of the 18 defendants so far in this North Texas Antifa terror case. And we don't know who these international people are, foreign people who's providing money. And there's also a Give, Send, Go that's being operated for the Antifa terror defendants. And now some of them are convicts as well.
Which is, again, I can't help but juxtapose the facts against what the mainstream media always tells us. And it's not just the mainstream media. Elected Democrats say the same thing. Antifa is just an idea. They're a decentralized network. This is just grassroots. This is just people that have grievances against the government. Yeah, international figures, you don't even know who they are sending money to defend acts of terror in the United States. That is not a decentralized network. That's just an idea that doesn't exist.